everyone, and welcome back to I've Been Playing. It's been a little while, but today we're going to take a probably pretty short look, to be honest, at Cyberpunk 2077. Now, if you're at all engaged with the gaming space, if as it were, you know what Cyberpunk 2077 is, at least sort of, because it had a less than stellar launch, shall we say. Came out at the end of 2020, I want to say early December, though I don't remember exactly, and it was a bit of a mess, which is why it's taken me so long to play it, because I wanted it to be in a state where it was playable. Now, so far I've only played about 10 hours, and that's been over the course of a little over a month, so I'm bad enough at remembering plot details when I play a game cohesively over the course of maybe a week, so we'll see how much I remember exactly of what's going on. But the first thing you do, basically, if you aren't aware, it is based off of a tabletop RPG, which I think is also called Cyberpunk 2077. I don't remember if the number's the same, or if there is a number, or if it's called something else, but there is a tabletop version. It's based on that. It's an RPG, obviously. You pick one of three, I believe, starting types. You have your Corpo, which is the corporation. It's what it's short for. You have the Nomad, which is what I picked, where you start out in the desert and you have a car. And then you have the third one, which I think is Street Kid, which is probably pretty self-explanatory. So you pick one of these three starting classes when you boot up the game. Essentially what happened with my run as a Nomad, I started out, as I said, out in the desert, and met up with Jackie, who you may know from much of the advertising and commercials and what have you for the game. Trying to smuggle something into Night City, if I remember correctly. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. You're trying to smuggle something into Night City, you get into Night City, then you set up a life in Night City and essentially become a mercenary, and then you live in Night City and do Night City things and go around the city doing jobs for people and picking up missions and side quests and basically mostly being in the underbelly of the city and doing odd jobs, by which I mean mercenary work and lots of killing. At least if you're me, because apparently I'm very bad at sneaking. That is essentially all I can remember, and all I really picked up. Again, as I said, I have been playing this over the course of more than a month, and I've only played 10 hours, which kind of tells you my time frame. I mean, that's, what, maybe 20 minutes a day, probably, and I definitely wasn't playing it every day, so I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details. One thing I will say is that it does look much better, it does run much better on console than it did at launch. Much, much, much better. Graphics looked fine. It didn't have any glitches. Well, there were a couple of glitches. There was one where somebody just appeared in front of me, and there was one where somebody was sitting on a bench and then stood up and sat down again a couple times in very quick succession, but nothing nearly as bad as it was on consoles at launch. I was playing it on Xbox Series X, which I think was the better console to play it on, or certainly the new generation of consoles were better than the old one. I mean, it was nowhere near the PC, but even the PC port had its problems. Anyway, it looks much better, it runs much better, it functions much better. I feel like I may have had to slow down a couple of times, but that might be the other game I'm playing at the moment that I'm thinking of, which is experiencing slowdown. In any case, it definitely is a much better game at this point, and honestly, they probably should have waited. I mean, I think that's one thing everyone can agree on, is that this game came out far before it was ready, and was not where it should have been at all for consumers. Like, it was a mess. I don't know if it took them until this year to get it all cleaned up. Obviously, I haven't played it before this year, so I don't know when it got to a state where it was at least acceptable. But if you want to play it, now is probably the best time to do it. Also, there's a DLC coming at some point, and I'm pretty sure it includes a full patch that kind of cleans things up even more. With that said, I'm not really enjoying it. I'm not hating it either, but I just can't find myself caring that much. I don't know what it is. It's not really the game's fault. I think the fact that it's just super depressing and dark and gritty and gross and grimy and whatever else. I'm just not in the mood. I'm just not in the mood for it. It's a perfectly fine game, but it's just too dystopian. I don't know. There's something about it that, at least at the moment, I just don't like it. Maybe it feels a little too real, parts of it, but just not in the mood. And I think that's the reason it's taken me so long to play so little, because I just often don't find myself wanting to engage with a world that is so horrible to be in. That, and I'm very bad at it, I think, is another thing. Like I said, I'm not the best at sneaking, even though I try. I am not great at the gunplay either, and I don't know why. Like, it's just your average shooter in regards to how the controls work and stuff like that for the most part. There's some hacking you can do as well, and maybe if I use that more often it would be better. I don't know, but I don't know. I just don't think I'm in the mood for it. I don't think I'm going to play very much more, certainly not at the moment, because I'm just not in the mood for it. It's not terrible, but I just can't care about it, if that makes sense. But that's been my experience with Cyberpunk 2077 over the past month or so. If you've played it, either at launch or now, more recently, whatever, on what happened with your version, because there was a lot going on, especially right after it launched, so it's always fun to see all of the crazy stuff that happened. But let me know what you think about it down in the comments down below. Do you agree with me or not? Let me know that as well. And I hope I will see you next time.